Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Inspire. Today's going to be sort of like a part 2 to my previous video titled, When Does Life Really Begin? If you haven't seen that video, make sure you check it out. Like I said at the end of that video, if anybody has any rebuttals to my view on pro-life, then I will respond, which I'm going to do exactly that in this video here today. But before we get started, I'm going to send you off to another short clip of Charlie Kirk in tribute to his loss.
What species in the animal kingdom is the fetus?
A human.
So if it's a human, shouldn't that human get human rights?
I don't know. I don't believe there's any.
But shouldn't you get human rights even if you can't survive without another? Shouldn't you get human rights even if you're small and that you happen to be in utero at that moment?
I don't know. I can't come up with a response to that.
I want you to think about it. I want you to reflect on it. And the point is this. Abortion we have carved out in the Western moral standard where none of our other morals apply. We believe that murder is wrong. We believe that stealing is wrong. We believe that all these things are wrong for grown adult humans, but not for small humans.
Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I hope you're all excited today. Today, like I said, is going to be a part 2 of my previous video titled, When Does Life Really Begin? If you haven't seen that video, I suggest you check it out. But if not, no worries. I'm going to go through a brief summary of that video with you guys right now. So, basically, in my previous video, I stated that I was pro-life. I also stated that I believe life begins at conception. I then went on to explain the biological definition of life, which is defined by certain characteristics, which are growth, metabolism, response to stimuli, and the ability to reproduce. I then went on to explain that a zygote meets the basic criteria of life based off that definition, since it is already growing, metabolizing nutrients, and directing its own development. I then went on to share a few Bible verses as biblical evidence that life begins at conception. So basically, I have a couple people that watched my previous video that have a rebuttal against my view, which is perfectly okay. Like I said, everybody has the right to their own opinion. Everyone has the right to their own view. We're simply here to talk, debate, and have a conversation. Nobody's here to shame. Nobody's here to attack. We're simply here to talk. So I'm going to respond to those rebuttals. I'm only going to share one person's rebuttal with you, since my response should answer both persons' rebuttal. So if we go and we look on my previous video, and we go down to this person's response, you'll see that this person says the biological definition of life is completely useless in regards to the social question at stake here. It is a useful definition for biologists, but not for those kinds of issues. A bacterium adheres to this definition of life, yet we do not see people advocating for the lives of the trillions of bacteria killed during a hand wash or a hand sanitizing. What is more appropriate to use is in the realm of psychology and neuroscience, namely consciousness or the breadth of the stimuli received by the zygote/fetus. I stopped watching after you started reading Bible quotes. Why? Separation of the church and state. So let me explain what this person is doing here, because what this person is doing is very common for people to do in a debate, and it's known as straw manning. For those of you that don't know what straw manning is, I'm going to explain. A straw man argument happens when someone misrepresents your position, usually by replacing it with a simpler or exaggerated version that's easier to attack, and then argues against that instead of your actual point. So where does this straw manning begin? Well, it begins when this person says a bacterium is alive, but we don't protect bacteria, so the biological definition of life is useless. This person is implying that my argument is anything alive should be protected. But that's not what I'm implying. My actual position is we should protect all human life because every member of the human species has intrinsic value. That's a totally different claim. I'm not equating all life. I'm distinguishing human life from non-human life. So yes, this is a straw man argument because they're attacking a weaker version of my argument. Basically, life equals moral value instead of human life equals moral value. I get what this person is saying, but I think there's a little misunderstanding of my point. I'm not arguing that every living thing deserves rights, only that every human life does. Bacterium is alive, sure, but it's not a human organism. The embryo, though, already is a living human being with its own DNA growing on its own path. So the real question isn't just about being alive, it's about whether we protect all members of the human family equally, no matter what stage of life they're in. Now I want to bring up a problem when people try to look things up. Let's take this for an example. When someone types in the Google search engine, is a fetus classified as a human? You might get something like this. A human person is a human life. But among philosophers, there is no consensus as to whether all human entities, including the zygote, embryo, and fetus, constitute human persons. Now notice that it says philosophers. Philosophers and scientists are two different people. Science deals with facts about the physical world, what is. It can observe, measure, and describe. Philosophy deals with meaning, value, and moral status, what ought to be. Philosophy tells us what it means to be human and how we should treat that life. Now, if you also look, it says among philosophers. When you use the term among, it means some but not all. It is a way of referring to an idea or debate that exists within a larger community of philosophers, but it is not universally accepted or agreed upon by everyone in that group. Now, if I go to Google and I type in the search engine, do some philosophers believe life begins at conception? You'll get this. Yes, many philosophers, along with a significant portion of the scientific and religious communities, believe human life begins at conception. This view is often supported by the argument that a unique human genetic code is created at fertilization, and some philosophical traditions hold that the zygote is a distinct human organism from that point onward. So where does the problem really lie when you have a pro-life and pro-choice person debating? Well, the problem lies in semantics. Arguing semantics basically means getting stuck debating the meaning of a word instead of dealing with the real issue. It's when someone focuses on how you're using a term, like life, human, or person, instead of addressing the substance of your argument. For instance, when life begins or who deserves rights. It often happens in abortion debates because words like human and person overlap in everyday speech but have different meanings in science, philosophy, and law. So, for example, pro-life people make the argument life begins at conception because that's when a new human exists. Pro-choice response is, well, it's not really a person, it's just a clump of cells, so it's not human yet. So here they're redefining human to mean person with rights, not member of the human species. That's arguing semantics, focusing on word definitions instead of the facts or moral principle. So going back to this right here, it's not scientists that disagree, it's philosophers that disagree. And not all philosophers, but some. Now, do scientists disagree? Yes, but usually on small things. but you're never going to find two different textbooks saying two different things. They're all going to say the embryo is a biological human. But philosophers disagree about whether it's a person. So really there's no clear consensus that it has rights like a born person does. Philosophers disagree about personhood. But that disagreement actually proves we shouldn't exclude anyone based on uncertain criteria. Throughout history, whenever we've denied personhood to a class of humans, for example, slaves, women, or the disabled, it's turned out to be a moral disaster. You are the same individual who was once an embryo. There was no point in your development when you became a different being. If we accept that the newborn is a person, then logically, the embryo, the same organism just earlier, must be one too. So, if we're trying to make the moral argument, let's say, that pro-choice people are really making, well, moral reasoning in uncertainty usually leans towards caution. If you're hunting and you see movement in the bushes and you're not sure if it's a deer or a person, you don't shoot. So if we're uncertain whether the unborn are persons, the ethical response is to err on the side of protecting life, not destroying it. If we're unsure whether an embryo is a person, ending that life risks killing an actual person. Now I want to go back to this person's response in my previous video and go back to the part where he says, I stopped watching after you started reading Bible quotes. Why? Separation of church and state. So let me clarify what separation of church and state actually means. I completely respect the separation of church and state. It just means the government can't enforce or establish a religion. It doesn't mean citizens can't mention or be influenced by their beliefs when discussing moral issues. That's correct both legally and historically. I'm not trying to turn the Bible into law. I'm explaining what motivates my view and what might motivate other people's views. So, when I quoted the Bible, it wasn't to say that law should force religion on anyone. It was just to show that for me, my moral view of life's value comes from my faith. But even if someone doesn't share that belief, there are strong scientific and philosophical reasons to value life from conception too. So, even setting faith aside, biology tells us a new human life begins at conception, and human rights principles tell us that all humans deserve protection. So whether you come from a faith background or a secular one, the conclusion can be the same, that every human life has worth. So I think I'm going to pretty much end this video there. I think I pretty much covered everything. So I just want to say, if you liked the video, make sure you hit the like button. If you would like to subscribe, then go ahead and subscribe. You know, don't just be a stalker. You know, subscribe. So anyways, thank you all for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and God bless you all.
To sing God's praise.